everyone, and welcome back to what is already our third track of today. And thank you so much for tuning in to this session from Jean-Michel Coeur, who is going to be talking about data strategy and is going to giving an explanation around where do you get started. Let me give a brief introduction towards our speaker today, who is hosting this session today from Singapore. For many years, Jean-Michel has a passion for uncovering insights from data and using that to positively impact business and society. His mantra is to analyze, theorize, plan, and then to be decisive. By bringing data science, analytics, and machine learning together, they bring together potential for any business that can be unleashed. Jean-Michel's greatest reward is customer success. He always looks for creative and disruptive solutions that can be developed to empower his customers through their innovation journey. After a successful career in data, consulting and analytics, spanning across the US, Europe, and Asia, Jean-Michel is leading the data analytics practice at Source Group to achieve its analytics mission, which is to empower enterprises to harness their data potential at scale. It's a great pleasure to welcome to Big Data Days for the first time, Jean-Michel Coeur. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Very much for having me.
Good, we can see you and I think we can hear you as well. So a warm welcome and thank you so much for providing this presentation at Big Data Days.
Thank you. So data strategy, where to start? And before we start, I would like to have a quick poll. As you can see, we have one question. It's about, in your opinion, what is the level of maturity of the company you work at, in terms of data? I think I need to start.
It's on the right-hand side. I don't.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing. I start to see some answers. So I give it another 5 seconds to 10 seconds to everyone. So a lot of us are starting with data, proficient with data, also data savvy, which is vague. Let's go to the next. So are you using the cloud to support your analytics needs? Let's have 10 seconds. So we have experimenting. Some people are considering as well. As needs evolved, more and more people are considering the cloud, it's true. And then the last question, how do you plan to increase cloud adoption if you are considering the cloud to support your analytic needs? Whether it's using internal, I mean, basically yourself, or a service cloud provider that is going to help you, or maybe a third-party service provider as well. I'll let you answer to those questions. Okay, I think we can proceed. So, where to start? First, a little bit of myself. I've been around for about 30 years in my professional journey, and I have been working in Americas, Europe, and obviously Asia for the past 11 years, based in Singapore. So where to start? Data is used to drive business outcome. Usually, it fits in 3 categories. Make better decision, whether you better understand the customer, the market, to uncover new products and services, or to improve operations, get more efficiency. For a bank, it can be digital KYC, know your customer, normalized operations, log capture, for example, call center operation, etc. And then risk and compliance. The last part, which is very important, especially in financial services, but also any data privacy regulation in telecommunication and even in e-commerce. So as data usage grows, challenges are rising. And often companies reach out a tipping point. The single use case based approach, which at some point support many use cases. Then there is a limited governance and control framework. Then we have a few machine learning models that are implemented and deployed. And there is a mixed role with no clear responsibility between the people. That's the tipping point. And unfortunately, at that time, often there is an increased velocity of data-driven decision. People want to get more decision made faster. There is more and more complex analytic and AI use cases that are coming up, and also complex regulatory requirement, whether it's GDPR, for example, with the right to be forgotten. How do you ensure that the customer data is deleted in your entire data platform and data landscape? And then as we grow, we reach what I would call the breaking point, when we cannot cope anymore. And this is what I want to talk about today. Time to get the data strategy before reaching that breaking point. Ideally, when reaching the tipping point. But where can we start? Where do we start? Well, I would like to start, it might seem obvious, but with the outcome. So what is the primary usage of data? So we just saw the primary usage of data, either make better decision, improve operation, and be compliant and reduce risk. Now, if there is an existing organization, analytic organization in place, what is its vision? What is its mission? We can start with the purpose. That will bring clarity in the overall goal of collecting data in first place. So from that mission, we can put together an analytic organization maturity assessment. So typically, it's a set of questions. You can have 50, 60 questions across 5 dimensions: analytic skill set, business outcome, data management, data access sharing, security and data compliance, and obviously platform infrastructure and toolset. So each question is usually ranked from 1, don't do much, 5, being proficient. And then we aggregate all the scores. And then we have a spider type of diagram that provides a complete picture of the maturity of the analytic organization. Then the second aspect is to identify the many initiatives that are already ongoing or that will start soon. To do that, we want to identify the primary stakeholders, who are the consumer of the analytic organization. And ideally, we want to build a framework to collect efficiently those requirements. Framework can be as simple as an Excel sheet, but we want to have a process, a clear process, because ad hoc requirement with new use case usually is something that, quote, kills an organization. And then we define the candidate roadmap, a first draft, using an analytic prioritization framework. So an analytic prioritization framework, again, is a set of questions that measures the business impact and technical feasibility of a given initiative. Easy to do, not easy to do, low impact, big impact, and then we score. And we put that on the chart And then we take either the low hanging fruit or just the best bet. And we release the first 3 or 5 deliverables outside a typical dashboard, obviously, that we want to deliver. And tip, we keep the analytic mission in mind. By keeping the analytic mission in mind, we stick to the main purpose of the analytic organization. The main purpose of why we are going to collect data in the first place. So that's it. Well, not so fast. So it goes way beyond technology. And if we look at the maturity assessment that I just talked about, we can start with the weakest dimension. In the maturity assessment, you have skills, organization, process aspect, you have the talent aspect, and you have the technology aspect. So let's start with the process, because I believe it's the most important aspect. Let me show you why. So the process is probably the first pillar of a data strategy, because we want to strengthen the requirement process first. Why? It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to hire people to do that. You don't have to buy software, buy hardware. You just have to discuss and agree on a process. So at Source, we put together a small framework that works at a working level, that helps people to nail down the requirement before collecting any data. And at a working level, often we don't necessarily ask those questions. When we receive an order, can you do this? Yeah, okay, I'm going to collect the data and put those data in maybe some data lake, etc. And hopefully that serves your purpose. So the idea here is to nail down a crisper set of requirements before doing the work. That way, we avoid rework because we didn't nail down enough the requirement at the beginning. So the first question is, what is it for? Casual conversation, coffee chat with the person that are asking you to collect data. What is it for? Because what we want is not to have the situation where if we built it, and sorry about the spelling mistake, if we built it, they will come. Well, I've seen many customers, they build gigantic data platform and they collect all the available data in case the data would be useful. Guess what? The use case didn't come. So that was wasted money and wasted time. The second aspect is who has a vetted interest in it, in the data. Who wants it? So not grasping the future use of data is a typical pitfall that we have seen, where we lack the context. Because we lack the context, either we don't deliver the right data, or we deliver the data that the person that is going to consume it think it's the right one. And this person may not be right, because this person may not know the data enough. And the third question is, what is the expected action? Do we know what is going to do the person that is consuming the data? So not knowing how the data is going to be used may lead to the opposite effect. If you are doing a segmentation, a customer segmentation for a given marketing campaign, you may want to know what type of marketing campaign is going on. Because your segmentation may have the opposite effect, where the sales are going to fall. So if the sales are going to fail, or to fall, sorry, then you have to redo it. Again, the idea here is by having a crisper set of requirements, we want to avoid rework. That lead to freeing up the team time to work on more important things like the analytic foundation in order to have a sustainable platform. So, process. Second aspect is the organization. I put that in a process bucket because it's important that when we work with multiple business lines, to have more experience with the business lines. Ideally, a type of organization that I've seen working very well is when you may have a centralized team of experts, but this centralized team is seconding their specialist for several months on a given business line. It can be here I put a loan, for example, you second somebody to the loan origination department. So that analytic person can gain more knowledge about loan origination and bring back that knowledge to the centralized team. So becoming more efficient in service of business. One thing that is important, if you can, is to have those autonomous teams with multiple specialists that work together. Typically in one team, one project team, you have IT, you have the analytic people, you have the business, all together, working as a team. So the second aspect leading to the people. The people are usually our best asset in the analytic space. So how we nurture the team members based usually on their primary profile. In a typical analytic organization, we have at least 4 profiles: data engineer, machine learning engineer, business analyst, and data scientist. So we need to first come up with a clear vision and mission. That's typically the analytic organization that has a clear vision and mission. So everybody is clear on the purpose, why we are here, why we are collecting data first place, what is the primary usage of data. By having clarity, we have a better chance to focus on the right thing. So in order to nurture the team members, one key aspect is to make data easily accessible to them. Data practitioners, they love playing with data. They don't want to wait 6 months to get access to the data. Keep process simple. If the process is super complex to get access to any type of data, that will turn their people off, and define obviously clear objective. The other aspect is growing the people with their business acumen, because data, it's a business matter. We need to understand the data, what it means for the business, so we understand how to process it and what to do with it, whether it's building dashboards, whether it's building a recommendation engine, building a bunch of clusters to do customer segmentation, or anything in between. Very important aspect, create a strong sense of a community. Have a sharing session, create a good data community to keep the spirit. And last part, trying to use recent technology and maybe the cloud. It's very hard to hire people to work on premises these days in the data world. People prefer to work with the latest technology on the cloud. So if you can, move to the cloud. And one important aspect as well is to build a culture of experimentation. In the data world, we do a lot of experiment because we don't know upfront what's going to happen. We have to test, we have to explore in order to see if something is feasible. So that means from ideas that are developing in groups to experiment and then production, we need to have a seamless process in place as well, with some vision. Again, back to the purpose of the analytics organization. Then the last part is also a relatively difficult one, the technology. Embracing new technology, use the cloud, and that usually help to attract talent. So in terms of technology, we often talk about data platform. Either you already have a data platform or you don't. If you have one, can you enhance it? Can you put maybe a little bit more governance in place? Can you make it hybrid between on-prem and on the cloud? If you don't have one or you want to build one, well, trying to build a unified data platform, not one data platform by business lines, only one unified data platform. Then we can talk about the business line like domains, but more about that in a minute. So when looking at the data platform evolution, we often started with data lake, first generation, or I would say often data swamp. You just put the data there and you forget to catalog it. So it's extremely difficult to discover. So as a result, only expert understand what's in it. So basically they become the gatekeeper in order to access to the information that is stored. So that doesn't help solving the problem. The second generation is lakehouse with data lake with data warehouse plus data catalog. So you have the discovery aspect, very important. So that allows you to broaden the access of the data to a larger audience and to start to unlock the bottleneck that is usually IT taking care of the entire platform because the business lines don't know how to deal with the data platform. And then what I would call the third generation, it's very popular these days, having a data mesh approach with such a data platform. Data mesh is not a technology, it's an approach. So that means starting with a clear ownership, define role and responsibilities, remember the tipping point. If you have a clear process with clear role and responsibilities, that helps a lot before reaching the breaking point. So a data owner is a person that is responsible for the data end to end for a given like a data set, for example, from the application up to maybe a dashboard or a recommendation engine. At least somebody who can follow the line end to end and can drive the ultimate outcome. That's very important. Otherwise, we'll again forget the outcome. The other aspect is those data platforms using a data mesh approach are organized by business domains. That allows parallel experimentation. So that also allows some segregation in terms of data access rights, but still using the same unified data platform with one enterprise data catalog. And here, for example, in financial services, you can have loan origination, investment, or compliance, different type of access, different type of data product. And talking about data product, a data product is the ultimate outcome from the data owner. So we have different type of data product. You have the raw data product, so to speak. That would be a denormalized data set that allows you to build maybe a dashboard or to train data, to build a machine learning model, or to make data available through an API to somebody else. Those dashboard, those machine learning model are what I would call derived data product, but they are still data product. And the idea here is that having an ultimate outcome of an ID into some tangible result. Then very important as well, simplified self-serve platform design. That platform needs to be accessible with obviously the right access rights, the right security control, etc., but needs to be accessible for more people. We really want to democratize the access to the data. That means the toolset needs to be easy to use. We need to have interfaces that are easy to use by business people, by data analysts, and by data scientists and data engineer as well. So back to the four main profile that we have in an analytic organization. So when building a data platform, you have usually two approaches. The single analytic use case approach, where you build that use case by use case. And at some point, you realize that you lack governance. You lack data governance. You lack a proper framework to make sure not everybody has access to the right to the data. To make sure that you have data observability built in everything that we do. So as a result, what we are using at Source Group is more a platform approach, where we have this approach with scale analytic in green on the right side. It takes a little bit more time to build upfront, and then we can roll out use cases. As we roll out use cases, we strengthen the design of the platform because we realize that there are a few gaps. So instead of trying to guess every single use case under the sun that the platform could cater, build a minimum viable product that can support a set of use cases and strengthen the framework as you go. That would be my main tip for today. The second aspect of the technology pillar for a data strategy is a migration. You have data somewhere already. You already have a data warehouse. You already have a data platform on premise. You want to move some of the data or all on the cloud. So starting with the existing landscape, we need to understand what is out there and define the new analytic infrastructure and also what I call a data migration blueprint. Two aspects. Analytic infrastructure on one side, data migration blueprint on the other side. So how does it work? Well, we do have a framework. We love framework at Source Group. In terms of data migration, we start with discovering the ecosystem between applications, data warehouse and data platform, and everything in between, which feed those data warehouse and data platform, which are the ETL and any type of middleware. So when looking at the application, we look at what type of data are linked to those applications, because usually data are coming from the application. Whether we collect the data using change data capture, using streaming a pipeline, using a Kafka, for example, or just batch of data extract, we need to understand the type of data that are coming in, having a proper data classification in order to assign the proper service control, security control, etc. So with those three aspects, that allows us to build a functional design, a technical design with migration blueprint. And then the output information from that data migration assessment is an infrastructure piece, which is the application analytic roadmap, and then the data migration blueprint, which is a guided principle on how we are going to move data into the target platform. So first, we define the target platform with the main functionality, And then we define templates. Again, let's be efficient. A migration blueprint that will go into a representative MVP, which is your first version of your data platform with enough security control, guardrail, and data governance in place to support the first 5, 6, 10, 20 use cases. Tip: you want to define the outcome as potentially choose a lighthouse analytic application to serve the important users, not necessarily the easy to do, which doesn't have too many users. Again, we're trying to focus on the outcome. That means if it's not too complex, we take the most important outcome on a user perspective. That's very important. So to recap, the overall data strategy, where we start. So we have two aspects. We need to embrace an holistic view and focus on the outcome. So to embrace an holistic view, we look at process, people, and technology. And often we need to start with process. And this is, I believe, how we can build high-performance team to support a good data strategy. If we only focus, as I've seen most of the time, on technology, well, I would say technology doesn't matter too much. If we don't have the process in place to collect the right requirement and to narrow the requirement to the minimum data that we need to collect in order to serve a given use case, we reach out a breaking point much faster than we think. The other aspect is the people. As I'm sure a lot of us are very aware, data analytics consultant, data analytics engineer, machine learning engineer are very difficult to find these days. So if we don't cater them, if we don't nurture them, they will leave. So nurturing the people, empowering them, and give them autonomy within obviously certain boundaries. But it's very important to give them enough autonomy so they are happy within, again, boundaries of what can be done. And obviously, technology, if you are using the cloud, fantastic. There are so much that you can do with the cloud, but it's not easy. It requires an adjustment on the organization. It depends on the people as well and on the various processes. We don't collect data and process data the same way on premise than we do on the cloud. Different processes. And the second aspect is focus on the outcome, on the data strategy. As I mentioned already, a clear process for data access, so it's easy for people to understand how they are going to access to the data. A migration blueprint, if you want to migrate the data onto the cloud or from on-premise to on-premise. And the most important part is to try to operationalize your data platform from the get-go, from the very beginning. Think about how it's going to be governed. Think about data catalog the minute you start to think about the data platform. It has to exist from the get-go. Otherwise, you are going to, if you use the cloud, to dump data on an S3 bucket or ADLS storage for Azure. And then this data will not be practically consumable by the people who need it. That means you need to put technical people in the mix that will be the guardian of that kind of data swap. So having a data catalog, a proper data governance and service control from the get-go is super, super important. And if you do that, you can more focus on the outcome instead of focusing on how I'm going to do it. So I hope it's a little bit clear. And I would almost conclude on the kind of magic framework to focus on the outcome. If there is one thing I would like to you to take home is those 3 questions. Next time somebody asks you, can you do this for me? Yeah, sure. Can you explain a little bit? Can you provide me more context? What we want to know is, what is this information for? If we build it, they will come. Not quite. Don't forget, we want to know who is going to consume the information, to consume the data. Because if we know who is going to consume the data, we will also identify the format. A business person is happy with the dashboard. A business person is not going to look at the dataset to do a SQL query. Not quite. A data analyst, if a data analyst has some kind of programming skills, maybe a data analyst will be happy with a SQL query, typically a Presto interface on a large data lake to just look at what is available. And a data scientist, well, they may be the easiest way to serve on one side because they will be happy with the data set. However, the data scientist is going to ask you for the raw data. And you may be reluctant to provide the raw data because you can argue that you prefer to give some data that are already cataloged, well identified, as opposed to data that are not properly tagged. And by providing data that are more better defined, that allows us as well to target the right outcome, as opposed to give something that is not suitable and then you do rework again. And last one, what is the expected action? Do you know what this person is going to do with that? Because if you know, you may collect additional data or less data, or you may want to talk to that person because you have another question before you start doing the work. So my final tip, know the end user that consume what you are producing. Meet this person. Just say hello. To better understand, put yourself in their shoes so you understand where they are coming from, what really they want to achieve. And that will help you to collect, process the right data and produce what is expected. So thank you very much for this session. I hope you learned a few tricks. And if you want to learn more, please join us at the Source Group Data Analytic event on July 1st. Now questions.
Thank you so much, Jean-Michel. I think this was a very good overview, very practical on how to start with the data strategy. I like how you put it into that triangle and makes it really clear on where to get started. You apparently had quite a sweet spot in terms of people asking questions throughout. So I'm going to try to moderate as many questions as I can within the next few minutes. It's going to be a bit of a challenge because there's so many. Yeah, let's try to keep the answers a little bit brief so we can discuss those questions in detail. Let's start with the first one, which is probably more of a definition question. And that is, what is the MAS feed framework? I live in Southeast Asia, so I know, but I'm going to let you explain.
The MAS feed framework is fairness. It's a framework that promotes the fairness. So basically, if you implement in financial services an algorithm that can assess the loan rate for a target customer, you have to explain to MAS how you do it, because MAS want to make sure that it's fair to everybody. You don't have specific features inside your algorithm that will lead to any bias of that algorithm. And it's not easy to do.
Very, very good. And just to kind of add to that for the people who are joining outside Southeast Asia
Yeah.
region, MAS stands for the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So that I think that's a kind of an addition that you should know. Good, thanks so much for that. Then let's go towards our next question, which I also think is a very interesting one, more from your personal experience. And that is, how do you select your data team members? What are your main criteria?
Very good question, because, well, I am hiring.
That's good.
Hello? I am hiring. So I look at somebody who is thinking about the art of the possible, somebody who is very logical, and who can dig into the details. That's whether it's more a data engineer profile, data analyst profile, machine learning, it doesn't really matter. That's the most important thing. And second important is somebody who can think about architecture. Because in the data world, we build houses and cathedrals.
Yeah.
It has to stand when we start to put more and more pieces together. So somebody who can think not quick and dirty, I mean, we understand quick and dirty, but can think about what would be the target architecture of a bunch of processes assembled together. So those two criteria mainly.
Very, very good. So I like the way that you focus also on the design part, because that's also what I've been seeing as a quite of a challenge to find people who can look at the bigger picture and a conceptual design overview and
Yeah.
architecture and so on. Good. It's also good to know that Jean-Michel is hiring. So if you're inspired by this session and would like to be part of this team with a very clear strategy, then by all means contact him afterwards. Good, then let's move towards our next question, which is coming from Jean. Jean is asking, how do you maintain data accuracy from the start till the end? As data is managed by human could make errors, etc.
That will be a full webinar. uh, so data accuracy is first trying to remove the human. Like data accuracy means we are going to collect data in automated way, and we are going to check usually we check accuracy in two ways, using heuristic methods. In count, we count records, etc., and we look at values in statistic ways. And that's the very first thing to do. The second aspect is automate, automate, automate. You don't want to have a human in between. We all make mistakes, and more than computers.
Yeah.
In short.
Very good. So if you can host a full hour webinar on that, maybe I'm going to hold you up to that and invite you to talk about that for another hour somewhere next year. Good. Then our fourth and probably final question is also, I think, a very good one. I'm not quite clear on the difference between a data lake and a lake house, which you showed in your slides. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, there are many definitions. There is not one single definition, but usually a data lake is more a data swamp where you put data in a cheap storage, and then you process the data when it's required. Lake house is a data lake plus a data warehouse in the middle that is included in the entire process. So often the data warehouse is a target for a lot of data that goes into the data lake. But ideally, in a data lake or in a lake house, you have 80% of the data in an object store, typically Amazon S3 bucket or Azure ADLS to storage, and maybe only 20% of the data in the expensive data warehouse that requires compute.
Good. That's a very good point and a very brief explanation. Thank you so much for that. Good. Before we say goodbye and thank you for your contribution, I just wanted to let everyone know that the next two speakers are already waiting, and the next sessions will start in 15 minutes. Once again, you will need to make a difficult choice whether you're going to be listening to Trista Penn, who is going to be talking about from DBA and open source contributor to CTO, and how can you take the steps to become that and become a commercial open source company. That's going to be on this track. So if you're interested in this line, just stay on the call, and we're going to be automatically launching this next part within this track. On the second track, we're going to be listening towards Dr. Mohammed Al-Bayadi, who is going to host a session around machine learning and artificial intelligence. So if you would like to learn a little bit more around that, and especially the differences between ML and AI, then I strongly recommend that you switch tracks and go to Dr. Mohammed's session. With that, Jean-Michel, I know it's the first time you've been presenting at Big Data Days, but I think it was a very clear, concise, and relevant presentation. So I want to thank you very much for your contributions today. Also would like to reiterate everyone that Mr. Jean-Michel is hiring. So if you are interested and you're looking for a career change, please connect with him after the session. It's been really a pleasure to have you here during Big Data Days, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your years of insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Jan Willem. Really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Good.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.